Battlefields have a smell that never leaves you.
I will not
Iron
fall
and earth.
here.
Smoke and something sweet that should be sweet. The particular stench of bodies that used to be people but now were just meat cooling in the autumn air. Kira had been to 23 battles in her 31 years as a warrior of the Iron Peak clan, and they all smelled the same. The difference was that this time she was part of the smell. She sat propped against the ruins of a supply wagon, what used to be wood and canvas, now reduced to charred splinters. Her left leg stretched out at an angle that wasn't quite right. The knee had stopped working properly 4 hours ago when a warhammer caught it mid-swing. Or maybe it was 5 hours. Time moved strangely when you were bleeding out. The wound in her side kept weeping despite the bandage she'd fashioned from a dead soldier's cloak. Human cloak, probably. Maybe orc. After a certain point, the dead all looked the same regardless of skin color. Just bodies that used to dream and hope and fear, now empty. Around her, Black Ridge Fields stretched in every direction like a graveyard someone forgot to finish. Human bodies in their silver and blue. Orc bodies in leather and steel. So many bodies that the crows would feast for weeks. Kira's fingers found the carved stone at her belt, smooth from years of handling, warm from her body heat. Marin had made it when he was 10, all proud of the runes he'd etched that meant strength in kinship in the old tongue. He'd been 12 when a human crossbow bolt found his chest at the Battle of Greymore. 4 years ago, or maybe 5. Numbers were getting slippery. The sun was doing that thing where it turned everything golden right before giving up for the day. Kira had always liked sunsets. Seemed appropriate she'd get to see one more. That's when she heard footsteps. Not the heavy march of a patrol, just one person, picking their way through debris, trying to be quiet and failing because armor doesn't do quiet no matter how careful you are. Kira's hand went to her axe before her brain reminded her that her hand couldn't lift it anymore. The weapon lay 5 feet away, blade buried in mud like a grave marker. Might as well have been 5 miles. The footsteps stopped. Kira looked up and saw him standing there. Human, young. Couldn't be more than 23, probably younger. Still had that look in his eyes like the world might make sense if he just tried hard enough to understand it. War hadn't beaten that out of him yet. He was tall for a human, nearly her height, with dark hair matted with sweat and grime. His armor was standard infantry issue, marked with the silver hawk of North March. The sword in his hand trembled, just slightly. Just enough that Kira knew he'd never had to decide whether to kill someone who wasn't fighting back. She'd seen this moment before, usually from the other side. When you found an enemy wounded and alone, there were 2 choices, quick mercy or slow death. Nobody chose slow unless they were the kind of monster that made other monsters uncomfortable. This boy didn't look like a monster. But then, monsters rarely did until it was too late. Please, Kira said, and hated how her voice cracked. Warriors of the Iron Peak clan didn't beg, but there was begging and there was being practical. Make it fast. The sword stopped shaking. The boy's eyes went wide. The kind of wide that happens when you realize the enemy you've been trained to hate just used the word please like a person. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The sunset kept painting everything gold. Somewhere in the distance, a raven called out, probably excited about the feast waiting. And this human boy just stood there, sword raised, frozen like someone had turned him to stone mid-swing. Then he did something Kira didn't expect. He lowered the sword. He started, stopped, tried again. You're hurt. Kira would have laughed if laughing didn't feel like it would tear her in half. Very observant. That's good. Means you might live long enough to regret what comes next. What comes next? You kill me, Kira said, like explaining something obvious to a child. Quick. Through the heart or throat? Heart is better. Throat takes too long. Tastes like copper. Not a good last taste. The boy's face did something complicated. Horror mixed with confusion, mixed with the kind of distress that came from discovering the enemy bled red and thought about what their last taste would be. I can't, he said. You can, Kira corrected. It's easy. Pointy end goes in, life comes out. You've done it before, in battle. That's different. And is it? Kira tilted her head, studying him. You've killed orcs before. I can see it in how you hold that sword. So what's different about me? You're not fighting. Would it help if I insulted your mother, called you a coward, threatened to eat your liver? Kira tried to put some energy into it, make it sound like a proper orc threat, but it came out tired. Everything came out tired. The boy did something even stranger. He sheathed his sword. Kira blinked. That's not how you kill someone. I'm not going to kill you. Then what are you going to do? We've been over the options. There's death and there's slower death. Those are the choices. No. The boy's voice got firmer, like he was trying to convince himself as much as her. There's a third option. I've been a warrior for 16 years, Kira said slowly. I've never seen a third option. The boy stepped closer. Kira's hand twitched toward her axe again, old instincts dying hard, but he kept his hands away from his weapon. Moved slow, like approaching a wounded animal, which Kira supposed she basically was. He knelt beside her, close enough that she could smell the leather of his armor and the particular scent of human sweat, which wasn't so different from orc sweat when you thought about it. Close enough that if she had any strength left, she could have grabbed him by the throat. She didn't have any strength left. I'm Davin, he said, which was possibly the most absurd thing to say to someone who might be dying. Then again, maybe it wasn't. Maybe knowing someone's name before you died was better than dying among strangers. Kira, she heard herself say. Kira. Davin repeated it carefully, getting the emphasis right, like he actually cared about pronouncing it correctly. Your leg is bad. And that wound in your side. He leaned closer, squinting at the blood-soaked bandage. That's from a blade. Recent. If it doesn't get cleaned and stitched, I die, Kira finished. We covered that already. I asked for fast. You're making it slow. What if there was a way where you didn't die at all? Kira studied his face, looking for the trap, looking for the cruelty that had to be hiding behind those serious brown eyes. She'd seen humans show mercy before, usually right before they did something worse than killing. But this boy just looked earnest, genuinely, stupidly earnest in a way that was going to get him killed someday. Maybe today. Why, Kira asked. Why what? Why would you save your enemy? Davin was quiet for a moment. His hand moved to a small pouch at his belt, fingers drumming against it. My brother died 3 years ago, at the Battle of Ashwood Vale. An orc killed him. Kira felt something cold settle in her stomach. Here it came. The revenge. The hate. The reason this was all an elaborate way to make dying hurt more. I hated orcs after that, Davin continued. Voice steady, factual. Hated everything about them. Volunteered for every patrol, every raid. Wanted to kill as many as I could. Thought it would make the hate smaller. Did it? No. But Davin looked at her, and there was something in his eyes that Kira recognized because she'd seen it in her own reflection after Marin died. It just made more hate, more dead, more people like you and me sitting in ruins wishing we'd died in battle instead of after. Kira's fingers found the carved stone again. Marin, sweet, foolish Marin who made art out of rocks and played games with children. Who shouldn't have been at the battle where he died? My brother made this, she said, and wasn't sure why she was saying it. Maybe because they were both talking about dead brothers, and that made them something other than enemies for a moment. He was an artist. He was 12. Davin's eyes fixed on the stone. 12. The word hung there between them. Not a warrior, not a monster, just a boy who carved pretty stones and died before he got to finish growing up. I can't give you your brother back, Davin said quietly. And you can't give me mine. But maybe, he stopped, searching for words. Maybe we don't have to keep making more dead brothers. Pretty philosophy, Kira said, but some of the bite had gone from her voice. Doesn't change the situation. You're human. I'm orc. War is war. Then we change the situation. Davin stood, moving with sudden decision. Can you walk? Not well. Can you walk at all? Kira tested her good leg, pushing against the wagon wreckage. Her left leg screamed. Her side burned, but she managed to get upright, leaning heavily against the splintered wood. Define walk. Movement from point A to point B. Then maybe, slowly, if point B isn't far. There's an old shrine about 2 miles west, abandoned during the early campaigns. Brother Aldrich might still be there. He stayed to 10 wounded who couldn't be moved. A human monk, Kira said flatly. is going to heal an orc. Brother Aldrich heals anyone with blood and breath. It's kind of his thing, annoyingly principled about it. Your people will hunt me, not if they don't know you're there. Your people will execute you for helping an enemy, not if they don't catch me. Kira looked at him, really looked at him. This boy who should have killed her, who had every reason to walk away, who was instead offering to risk everything for someone he'd been taught to hate. You're either incredibly brave, Kira said slowly, or incredibly stupid. Can it be both? Despite everything, the pain, the blood loss, the sheer absurdity, Kira felt her mouth twitch. Not quite a smile, but close. Help me get my axe, she said. Davin retrieved the weapon, grunting with effort. The axe was made for orc strength, heavy enough to cleave through plate armor. He managed to lift it, barely, and brought it to her. Kira took it with her right hand, the one that still worked, and used it as a walking stick. Not exactly dignified, but dignity had stopped mattering around the please make it fast part. We walk slow, Davin said, positioning himself on her left side where the injury was worst. If you fall, I'm not strong enough to carry you, so don't fall. Inspiring. Working with what I have. They started moving. Kira's left leg dragged, sending fresh waves of pain with each step. The wound in her side pulled and wept, warm blood running down her hip. But she'd been hurt before. She knew how to split her brain into two parts. The part that felt pain and the part that kept moving despite it. The sun finished dying while they walked, painting the battlefield in shades of purple and gray. The ruins of Blackridge Fields looked even more haunting in twilight, shadows turning corpses into abstract shapes that didn't look quite human or orc. Just remnants. Why did you come to the battlefield? Kira asked after they had gone maybe 100 yards. Talking helped, kept her brain focused on something other than the 1,000 ways her body hurt. Looking for survivors from my unit, Davin said. Found 4. Helped them back to camp. Came back for one more sweep. Lucky me. Is it luck? Finding someone who decides not to kill you? Don't know yet. Ask me again if I survive. They walked in silence for a while. The shrine came into view slowly. A small stone building that looked like it had been built to last through apocalypses, which was good because it had seen several. Most of the windows were dark, but there was a flicker of candlelight in one of the lower rooms. Kira's vision was starting to blur at the edges. The specific kind of blur that said blood loss was catching up with intention. Her steps got heavier, slower. Stay with me, Davin said, gripping her arm tighter. We're almost there. Heavy? Kira mumbled. Too heavy for a human. You're not that heavy. I've carried supply packs that weighed more. Liar. Okay, yes. Massive lie. You're extremely heavy, like carrying a very muscular boulder. But we're managing. Kira's mouth twitched again, that almost smile becoming a habit. You talk when you're nervous. Is it that obvious? Very. Humans do that. Talk to fill silence. What do orcs do? Grunt and hope the problem goes away. Does it work? Sometimes. Kira's leg gave out. She caught herself on Davin's shoulder, pulling him down with her weight. They both staggered, nearly fell. Not this time, Davin said, voice tight with strain. Just a little further. Come on, Kira. You've survived this long. Don't quit now. Not quitting. Resting. Rest when we get inside. Resting now. Kira. My brother's stone, Kira said, and her voice sounded far away even to herself. It's falling. Davin looked down. The carved stone had indeed worked loose, hanging by a cord about to snap. He caught it before it fell, tucking it carefully into his own belt. I've got it, but you need to keep moving. Please. There was that word again. Please, the word warriors weren't supposed to say. The word that made enemies into people asking for help. Kira took a breath, then another. Then she pushed off the ground with her axe and took another step. They made it to the shrine door before she collapsed. Davin caught her, barely, and started shouting for Brother Aldrich with the kind of urgency that said he'd run out of calm and move straight into panic. Kira heard footsteps inside, saw a door open, spilling warm light. Then everything went soft and dark, and she let it take her. The last thing she felt was Davin's hand on her shoulder, tight like an anchor. The last thing she heard was his voice. I've got you. don't go anywhere. Like she had a choice. When Kira woke, she was warm. That was the first strange thing. Battlefields weren't warm, death wasn't warm, so either she'd survived or the afterlife had better heating than expected. She opened her eyes slowly, cataloging sensations. Pain, present but distant, wrapped in something fuzzy that might be medicine or might be her brain trying to be merciful. Breathing easier than it should be with a hole in her side. Smell. Herbs, soap, old stone, and the particular scent of boiled bandages that every healer's room shared across every culture. The ceiling above her was stone, marked with water stains and age. A single candle burned on a table, throwing dancing shadows. And sitting in a chair against the wall, head tilted back in sleep, was the human boy who hadn't killed her, David. Kira tried to sit up. Her body offered several detailed complaints, but nothing screamed imminent death. Improvement. The movement woke Davin. He jerked forward, nearly falling out of the chair, then blinked at her with the confusion of someone who'd been asleep but was pretending he hadn't been. "You're awake," he said. "I'm awake." Kira's voice came out rough, like she'd been screaming. Maybe she had been during whatever healing had happened. "How long?" 3 days. Kira absorbed this. 3 days meant the battle was long over. 3 days meant armies had moved. 3 days meant she should probably be dead. "Why are you still here?" she asked. Davin stood, moving to a water pitcher on the table. He poured a cup and brought it to her, offering it with careful movement that said he wasn't sure if she'd take it or throw it at him. Kira took it, drank. The water tasted like hope and limestone. "Where else would I be?" Davin said. "With your unit, your army, literally anywhere that isn't a rebel shrine hiding an enemy soldier. Brother Aldrich prefers sanctuary for the forgotten. Actually, he thinks rebel shrine sounds too exciting." "You didn't answer my question." Davin was quiet for a moment. Then he sat back down, and there was something different in his face. Something that looked like he'd been thinking for 3 days straight and had come to conclusions. "I told Commander Brecht I was scouting the western woods for orc stragglers," he said. "Bought us time, but they'll send a patrol eventually." "Us?" Kira repeated. "There's no us. You should leave before they come." "And go where? Back to killing orcs until one of them kills me? Back to hating so hard it burns a hole where my heart used to be?" Davin leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I've been sitting here for 3 days watching you breathe. Watching Brother Aldrich clean your wounds and stitch your side and set your leg. Watching someone who was supposed to be my enemy just be a person. A person who hurt. A person who bled. A person who has a brother's stone tucked in her belt because she can't let go of him." Kira's hand went instinctively to her belt. Found nothing. Panic flared. "It's safe," Davin said quickly, reaching into his own belt. He pulled out the carved stone, offering it with careful reverence. "I kept it with me, figured it was important." Kira took the stone, running her fingers over Marin's carvings. The runes that meant kinship, the strength that came from not being alone. "You could have left," she said quietly. "Could have walked away. Told yourself you did your good deed. No one would have blamed you." "I would have." Kira looked at him, really looked, at the exhaustion in his eyes, at the stubble on his jaw, at the way his hands kept moving to his sword, then away, like he couldn't decide if he was supposed to be a soldier or something else. "Your brother," she said, "at Ashwood Vale, what was his name?" "Tobias." Davin's voice went softer. "He was 21, wanted to be a blacksmith. Signed up for the army because the pay was better. Lasted 8 months. Marin was a sculptor," Kira said, surprising herself by sharing. "Terrible at fighting, amazing at art. He joined the Iron Peak Raiders because our father said every orc fights for the clan eventually. He lasted 3 battles." They sat in the silence of shared grief. Two people who'd lost brothers to a war that had taken so many brothers, it stopped counting them as people and started counting them as numbers. "I don't want more dead Butler Bipos," Devin said finally. "Not human ones, not orc ones. I'm tired of counting bodies and calling it victory. Doesn't change that we're on opposite sides of a war. Maybe we don't have to be. That's not how war works." "Then maybe war is wrong." Kira laughed, sharp, bitter, hurt her side. "You think you can just decide war is wrong and walk away? Your commanders will execute you for desertion. My clan will kill me for consorting with humans. There's no world where this ends well. Not with that attitude. Not with any attitude. It's called reality. Reality is just what we agree to call things. Davin stood, started pacing. The room was small, so his pacing looked like nervous shuffling. We called each other enemies, monsters, less than human or less than orc. We agreed to that reality and it made killing easier. But what if we agreed to something different? You're talking about one human and one orc, Kira said. Not armies, not kingdoms, just us. Starts somewhere, doesn't it? Davin stopped pacing, looked at her. Every piece started with one person deciding not to kill one other person. You're naive. Probably, but I'm also alive, and so are you. And 3 days ago, we both should have been dead. So maybe naive isn't the worst thing to be. Before Kira could respond, a door creaked open. An older human entered, 60-some with gray hair pulled back in a simple tie and robes that had seen better decades. His eyes were sharp and kind in equal measure, the kind of eyes that missed nothing and judged less. Brother Aldrich, Davin said. She's awake. I have ears, boy. I heard you philosophizing from the kitchen. Brother Aldrich moved to Kira's bedside with practiced efficiency, checking bandages, feeling her forehead for fever. Your wounds are healing well, child. The leg will need time, but you'll walk again. The side was deeper than I'd like, but clean. No infection. Thank you, Kira said, and meant it. Brother Aldrich pulled a small leather pouch from his robes, opening it to reveal dozens of smooth stones, each one different. He selected one, a piece of gray river rock, and placed it carefully back in the pouch. 63 souls, he said almost to himself. 64 now, counting you. He collects stones, Davin explained, one for every person he saves. Helps me remember they were real, Brother Aldrich said. Not numbers, not abstractions, real people who hurt and bled and deserve to go home. He looked at Kira, even the green ones. Kira felt something in her chest do a complicated twist. This human monk who'd saved her life, who added a stone to his collection like she mattered, like she was worth counting. How long until patrols find us, she asked. 4 days, maybe 5, Brother Aldrich said. Commander Brecht is thorough but cautious. He'll send scouts first. That gives us time, Davin said. Time for what? For you to heal enough to travel, and for this boy to decide what kind of man he's going to be. Brother Aldrich looked at Davin with the expression of someone who'd seen many young soldiers make many different choices. Easier to kill than to save. Safer, too. No one executes you for following orders. I'm not going back, Davin said. I can't. Not after... He gestured vaguely at Kira. Not after seeing that we're the same. We hurt the same. Bleed the same. Mourn the same. Then you'll need to leave before the patrols arrive, Brother Aldrich said. Both of you. There are places in the borderlands where neither side's law reaches. Settlements of deserters, refugees, people who got tired of choosing sides. It's not easy living, but it's living. I don't know the borderlands, Kira said. I do. Davin's voice got firmer. Passed through them during training. There's a town called Crossroads, former soldiers from both sides. They have rules, no fighting, no past, just present and future. Sounds too good to be true. Probably is, but it's better than here. Kira tested her leg again, flexing her foot. Pain, but manageable. The kind that whispered possibilities instead of screaming limitations. She could walk, maybe even run if she had to. But running meant leaving everything. Her clan, her honor, the only identity she'd ever known. She looked at Davin, at this human who should have killed her but chose a harder path. At Brother Aldrich, who kept stones to remember the saved. At the carved stone in her hands that still smelled like Marin's oil. Some choices didn't feel like choices. They felt like falling. Like stepping off a cliff and hoping there was ground below. 3 days ago, I asked you to make it fast, Kira said slowly. You chose different. Now I'm choosing different too. Davin's face did something complicated. Relief mixed with fear, mixed with hope. We leave at dawn, he said, before the patrols arrive. Brother Aldrich will give us supplies and a map. And then we figure it out as we go, Kira finished. Together. Together. The word felt foreign. Orcs didn't do together with humans. But maybe that's what made it worth trying. Because it was impossible and terrifying, and probably doomed. But it was also alive, and alive beat dead every single time. Kira held out her hand, her right hand, the one that still worked properly. David looked at it for a moment, understanding the weight. In orc culture, you didn't touch someone unless you trusted them not to use that touch to hurt you. He took her hand. His grip was firm but not crushing, human but not weak. Deal, Kira said. Deal, Davin echoed. And in that moment, with their hands clasped and Brother Aldrich watching with the satisfied expression of someone who just added another stone to his collection of impossibilities, something shifted. Small, fragile, but real. The war didn't stop. The hatred didn't disappear. The world didn't suddenly become kind. But two people who should have been enemies chose different. And sometimes that's how peace starts. Dawn came too early and too gray. The kind of morning that looked like it couldn't decide between fog and rain, and chose both. Kira stood at the shrine door, testing her weight on her bad leg. Better. Not good, but better. Brother Aldrich's healing had been thorough. The wound in her side was closed and bound. The knee stable, even if it complained. Davin was checking supplies one last time. Bread, dried meat, water skins, bandages, and a map sketched on what looked like the back of a prayer scroll. Brother Aldrich wasn't big on wasting materials. The path west follows the old merchant road for 4 miles, Brother Aldrich said, tracing the route with a trembling finger. Then you'll need to cut north through Whisper Woods. Stay off main roads. Both armies patrol them. There's a river crossing at the old mill. Cross there and you'll be in the borderlands by nightfall tomorrow. Thank you, Davin said, for everything. Don't thank me yet. You're walking into a life with no home and no certainty. Most people who run to the borderlands don't last a year. Brother Aldrich looked at them both, his sharp eyes measuring. But you two might be stubborn enough to make it work. Is that a compliment? Kira asked. It's an observation. What you make of it is up to you. Brother Aldrich pulled out his pouch of stones, running his fingers over them like prayer beads. 64 souls saved. Everyone chose to keep living when dying would have been easier. That takes a particular kind of strength. He handed Kira a small bundle wrapped in cloth. When she opened it, she found extra bandages, a jar of healing salve, and a water-smooth stone the color of jade. For your collection, Brother Aldrich said. When you save someone, and you will, add them to it. Remember that salvation isn't just big heroic moments. Sometimes it's just choosing not to kill when killing would be easier. Kira closed her fingers around the stone. It was warm from being in the monk's pocket. I'm not a healer. No, but you're someone who survived when you shouldn't have. That makes you qualified to help others do the same. Davin shouldered his pack, adjusting the straps. His armor was gone, too recognizable. He wore simple traveler's clothes now, brown and gray, the kind that said nothing about who you were or where your loyalty lay. Kira had kept her orc leathers but removed all the clan markings. Bare leather felt naked, wrong. But wearing the Iron Peak sigil into the borderlands would be like wearing a target. Ready? Davin asked. No, Kira said honestly, but that's never stopped me before. They left the shrine as the sun was trying to break through the gray. The merchant road was empty, which was both good and concerning. Empty meant no patrols. Empty also meant no witnesses if they ran into trouble. They walked in silence for the first hour. Not uncomfortable silence, just the quiet of two people saving their breath for walking. Kira's leg held up better than expected. The knee was stiff but functional, and the pain had settled into a dull throb that was easy to ignore once you got moving. Around mid-morning, Davin broke the quiet. Tell me about your clan. Because if we're doing this, running away, starting new, I should probably know more about you than just your name and the fact that you don't die easy. Kira considered this. Sharing clan stories with a human felt like betrayal. But then she'd already committed betrayal the moment she chose to leave. Might as well be thorough. Iron Peak Clan, she said. Northern Mountains. We're raiders, mostly. Fast strikes. Take what we need. Disappear before humans can mobilize. We don't have farms like lowland orcs. Too rocky, so we take from those who have. So bandits. Survivors, Kira corrected. There's a difference. Bandits take for greed. We take because winter in the mountains means you starve or you steal. Fair distinction. Davin stepped over a fallen log, offering a hand to help her across. Kira ignored it. She could manage, but appreciated that he had offered. What about family, besides Marin? Mother died birthing my younger sister. Sister lasted 3 days. Father raised us alone until he took an arrow in the spine during a raid. Been paralyzed below the waist for 7 years now. Lives with my uncle's family. I'm sorry. Don't be, he's alive. That's more than most warriors get. They walked through a stretch of birch trees, silver bark peeling like old scrolls. The forest was waking, birds calling, small animals rustling, normal sounds, the kind that said no one was hunting them yet. My turn, Kira said. Tell me about your family. Not much to tell. Father's a tanner. Mother helps with the business. 3 kids. Had 3. Tobias was oldest. I'm middle. Sister Ella is 17. Wants to be a scholar. Davin's voice went soft. Told them I was enlisting for the pay. Easier than admitting I was enlisting because I wanted to kill orcs for revenge. Did you kill many orcs? 7. Davin said it flat, factual. 8 if you count the one I wounded who probably didn't make it. Everyone had faces, expressions. One begged. Another fought till his last breath. The 7th just looked tired. War makes us all tired, Kira said. Yeah, it does. They reached the edge of Whisper Woods by early afternoon. The trees here were older, darker, tangled with undergrowth that required careful navigation. The path Brother Aldrich had marked wasn't a real path, more a suggestion of where the forest was slightly less hostile. Stay close, Kira said. These woods have a reputation. For what? For making people disappear. Old magic, maybe, or just good hiding spots for things that don't want to be found. Comforting. They pushed deeper. The canopy overhead blocked most light, turning afternoon into perpetual twilight. Sounds changed. Fewer birds. More rustling that could be wind or could be something with teeth. Kira's hand stayed near her axe. Davin's hand stayed near his sword. They moved like what they were. 2 soldiers in enemy territory. Except the enemy was everywhere and nowhere. An hour into the woods, they heard voices. Both froze. Davin held up a hand. Wait. Kira nodded, already scanning for cover. They moved off the non-path behind a massive oak with roots that created natural hiding spots. The voices got closer. Human. At least 3, maybe 4. Patrol. Waste of time, one was saying. If there were orc stragglers, they'd be long gone. Commander Brecht wants every sector cleared, another responded. We clear every sector. Yeah, but... The voice cut off suddenly. You hear that? Kira's heart kicked into high gear. Davin's hand went to his sword hilt, then stopped. Drawing a blade made noise. They needed absolute silence. Footsteps approached their hiding spot, slow, searching. Probably just deer, the first voice said, but he didn't sound convinced. Check it anyway. A soldier came around the oak, young, maybe 19, green enough that his armor still shined. He saw Davin first, saw the traveler's clothes, the neutral expression. Then he saw Kira. His eyes went wide, his mouth opened to shout. Davin moved fast. His hand came up, covering the soldier's mouth. His other arm wrapped around the boy's chest, pulling him close in a hold that looked like a hug, but was actually complete immobilization. Don't, Davin whispered. Please don't. The soldier struggled. His friends were maybe 20 feet away. One shout would bring them running. One shout would end everything. Kira stepped forward, locking eyes with the young soldier. She kept her axe at her belt, hands visible and empty. We don't want to hurt you, she said quietly. We just want to leave. Let us leave. The soldier's eyes were panicked. He'd probably never seen an orc this close who wasn't trying to kill him. Probably spent months hearing horror stories about green-skinned monsters. And here was one telling him they didn't want to hurt him. Your name, Davin said, voice gentle but firm. Tell me your name. Nod if you can do that. The soldier nodded shakily. Davin slowly removed his hand from the boy's mouth, ready to cover it again if he tried to shout. Willem, the soldier whispered. Private Willem. Willem, I'm Davin. This is Kira. We're not going to hurt you, but we need you to be quiet. Can you do that? Willem's eyes bounced between them. You're the orc from the shrine. Commander Brecht has patrols looking for you. I know, Kira said. That's why we're leaving. Going to the borderlands. never coming back. He'll have me executed if he finds out I let you go. He won't find out, Davin said. You tell him you searched this sector. Found nothing. We were never here. I can't. Yes, you can. Davin's voice got harder. You can choose. Same way I chose when I found her dying on a battlefield. You can kill us. Try anyway. Or you can let us go and tell yourself you never saw anything. Willem's friends called from deeper in the woods. Willem, find anything? Time compressed. The moment stretched thin. Willem looked at Kira, at Davin, at the path leading deeper into the borderlands and away from a war that had already taken too much. Nothing, Willem shouted back. Just a deer trail. Kira felt something release in her chest. Thank you, Davin said. Willem pulled away, stepping back, but not running, not shouting. You need to go. Now, they'll want to sweep this area twice. We're going, Kira said. She's really not going to eat me? Willem asked. Actual curiosity behind the fear. No, I only eat humans on Thursdays, Kira said. Today is Wednesday. Willem's face did something between terror and realization that she was joking. It landed somewhere near confused respect. Go, he said again. Before I remember, I'm supposed to be a loyal soldier. Davin gripped Willem's shoulder once. Brief. Grateful. Then they were moving, fast as Kira's leg would allow. Behind them, they heard Willem rejoining his patrol, heard him telling them the sector was clear. They didn't slow until they'd put an hour between them and the patrol. When they finally stopped to catch their breath, Kira leaned against a tree, leg throbbing. That was close, she said. Too close. Davin's hands were shaking slightly. Post-adrenaline. If he'd shouted, but he didn't. Why? Why would he let us go? Same reason you didn't kill me, Kira said. Because once you see someone as a person, it's harder to make them into a monster. They reached the river crossing just before sunset. The old mill brother Aldrich had mentioned was exactly where his map said it would be. A crumbling structure half collapsed into the water, wheels still and covered with moss. The river ran shallow here, easy to cross if you didn't mind wet boots. They crossed as the last light died. On the far bank, Kira turned to look back at Whisper Woods, back at the world she was leaving. Her clan, her father, everything she'd ever known about who she was supposed to be. Second thoughts? Davin asked. Fifth or sixth thoughts, Kira corrected. But I'm still here. Me too. They made camp a half-mile from the crossing, in a clearing that offered visibility in all directions. No fire, too risky. They ate dried meat and hard bread in darkness, listening to sounds of a forest that belonged to neither human nor orc territory. Play something, Davin said suddenly. Kira looked at him. What? The stone, He stopped. Sorry, that was stupid. No. Kira pulled out Marin's carved stone, turning it over in her hands. It's not stupid, but this isn't an instrument, it's just a carving. Tell me about it anyway, about him. Kira was quiet for a moment. Then, Marin was born small for an orc, weak, some said, but he had hands that could make beautiful things. He'd find rocks in the river and see shapes and hide them. Animals, faces, stories. She traced the runes. He made this when he was 10, carved the symbols our father taught us. Strength and kinship. He said as long as I carried it, I'd never be alone. He was right. Was he? I left my clan. I'm alone now. No, you're not. Davin shifted closer. You have me. For whatever that's worth. Kira looked at him. At this human who'd chosen mercy over duty, who'd walked away from everything, who sat here now in the darkness, still choosing her. It's worth something, she said quietly. They sat in the darkness, shoulders almost touching. Two people who'd walked away from everything. Two people who had nothing except each other and the hope that nothing might be enough. Davin, Kira said. Yeah? Thank you for not making it fast. Thank you for letting me choose different. The night settled around them, full of possibility and danger. They took turns on watch, sleeping in shifts, trusting each other with their lives. And when dawn came, they kept walking. Away from war, toward whatever waited in the borderlands. Together. The borderlands earned their name honestly. They weren't just geographical boundaries. They were the space where all boundaries got fuzzy, where law meant whatever the strongest person said it meant, where you could be anyone because no one asked who you used to be. Crossroads sat in a valley between two ridges, looking like someone had collected every architectural style and thrown them at a town without a plan. Human stone foundations, orc timber supports, even some elven glasswork in windows. It was chaos that somehow worked. Buildings leaned against each other like drunk friends. The sign at the town entrance was written in three languages: Common, Orcish, and what looked like Dwarvish. It said simply, "No past, no fighting, no questions." "Home, sweet home," Davin muttered. They'd spent 3 more days traveling, avoiding patrols, sleeping rough. Kira's leg had held up better than expected. Brother Aldrich's work was quality. By the time they reached Crossroads, she was barely limping. The streets were exactly what you'd expect from a town of refugees. Humans walking past orcs with careful neutrality. A dwarf arguing prices with an elf. Children of mixed heritage playing in the dirt, too young to understand why they shouldn't exist. There, Davin pointed to a building that might have been an inn or might have been someone's house that got too big. The sign said "The Broken Shield" in crooked letters. Inside, the common room was crowded with people who had stories they'd never tell. A human with orc clan tattoos on his neck. An orc woman wearing human peasant clothes. A mixed group playing cards with the aggressive friendship of people who decided differences didn't matter. The innkeeper was a massive orc male with one tusk missing and scars that suggested he'd earned his retirement. He looked up as they entered, eyes assessing with practiced speed. "New arrivals," he said, "not a question." "You running or visiting?" "Running," Kira said. "No point lying in a place built on not asking questions." "From the Northern Campaign. Both sides." The innkeeper grunted, understanding. "Rooms are 3 copper a night. 6 copper gets you meals. Work if you want to stay longer. Always need hands." He pushed a key across the bar. "Rules are simple. No fighting inside the town. No past names. No recruitment for either side. Break the rules, we break you. Understand?" "Understood," Davin said. "Good. You're in room 9, up the stairs, end of the hall. Roof leaks when it rains, but the bed's clean and the door locks." The innkeeper paused. "Welcome to Crossroads, or what passes for rest around here." Room 9 was small. 1 bed, 1 window, 1 chair that looked like it might collapse. But it had 4 walls and a door with a lock. The closest thing to safety either of them had felt in weeks. Kira sat on the bed carefully, testing the frame. It held. Davin took the chair, which creaked but didn't break. "So," Kira said, "now what?" "Now we figure out how to live," Davin said. "Find work, build something that isn't about killing. Maybe see if it's possible for 2 people from different worlds to make one new world that works." "That sounds exhausting." "Probably is," Davin smiled. Small, tired, but real. "But we've done harder things. We survived a war. We walked away from everything. We can probably manage a life." Kira pulled out Marin's stone, turning it over. "I'm scared." "Me too." "What if this doesn't work? What if we get caught? What if it does work?" Davin interrupted. "What if we build something good? What if we prove that choosing different was right?" "You're doing that optimism thing again." "Someone has to." A knock on the door made them both tense. Old instincts. But this was Crossroads. No past, no fighting. Davin opened the door. A young human woman stood there, maybe 20, with a child on her hip. The child had green-tinged skin and small tusks just starting to grow. "Sorry to bother," the woman said. "I'm Sarah. This is Fen. We live next door. Heard you were new." Kira said. "This is Davin." "Davin like the name? Or Davin like you used to be someone else?" "Just Davin." Sarah smiled, the kind that said she understood. "Just Sarah then. Welcome. It's not much here, but it's honest. You need anything, knock. Community is what keeps us alive." "Thank you," Davin said. Sarah left. The child Fen waved with a chubby hand. "A human and an orc," Kira said, processing. "Had a child together." "Seems like it. And they're alive. Living here. Raising a family." "Seems like it," Davin repeated. Kira looked at him. Really looked. At this human who'd chosen mercy over duty. Who'd walked away from everything. Who sat here now in a tiny room still choosing her. "Davin?" "Yeah. Come sit with me." The chair looks like it's going to murder you. David moved to the bed, sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched, close enough that Kira could feel his warmth, his breath, his presence. I'm glad you didn't make it fast, Kira said quietly. I'm glad you let me choose different. Kira turned to face him. His eyes were brown and serious and full of hope, mixed with fear, mixed with determination. What are we doing? She asked. I think, Davin said slowly, we're figuring out that enemies is something people made up. That underneath all the green skin and pale skin and propaganda, we're just people who hurt and hope and want to matter to someone. That's very philosophical. I've had time to think. Kira reached for his hand. Davin's fingers closed around hers. Gentle, firm, careful. His thumb traced the scar on her knuckle, the one she'd gotten at 16 during her first real fight. I don't know how to do this, Kira admitted. This, whatever this is, me neither. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we figure it out together. Together, Kira echoed, that word again, the impossible word that was starting to feel possible. She leaned forward. Davin met her halfway. Their foreheads touched, an orc gesture of trust and intimacy. His breath was warm on her face, her hand tightened on his. Is this insane? Kira whispered. Completely, Davin whispered back. Good. I hate boring. They sat like that as the sun set outside, turning the sky pink and orange. Two people from different worlds building one new world between them. It was small, it was fragile, but it was theirs. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Nothing worth doing ever was. Kira found work at the forge. Turned out orc strength was valuable when you needed someone to work heavy metal. The smith was a dwarf named Borin, who asked no questions, paid fair wages, and occasionally shared techniques Kira had never learned in her clan. Davin ended up helping at the inn. The massive orc innkeeper, who went by boss because old names didn't matter, needed someone who could deal with both human and orc customers. Davin was qualified by virtue of having been enemy and friend to each. They fell into routines, working during the day, eating together at night, sharing the small room that slowly started to feel less like a hiding spot and more like home. Sarah became a friend. She'd teach Kira human customs. Kira taught her orc phrases. Little Finn would toddle between their rooms, belonging equally to both, proving every day that mix didn't mean broken. One evening, about a month after they'd arrived, they were walking back from the market. Kira had bought vegetables, actual fresh vegetables. Davin had haggled for bread still warm from the oven. I got a letter, Davin said suddenly. Kira stopped walking. From? My sister, Ella. Somehow she tracked me down through a friend who knew someone in the borderlands. She's smart like that. What did it say? Davin pulled the letter from his pocket. The paper was worn like he'd been reading it over and over. She says my parents think I'm dead, killed in action, that there was a memorial service, that the whole village mourned. He paused. She says she's glad I'm alive, that she doesn't care why I left, that she hopes I've found peace. Davin's voice cracked slightly. She says if I'm happy, that's all that matters. Kira took his hand. Are you happy? Davin looked at her, at this orc woman who'd become his entire world, at the life they'd built from nothing. Yeah, he said, I think I am. Then your sister's right. That's all that matters. They walked home together, hands linked, carrying bread and vegetables and the weight of families who thought they were dead. It should have felt sad. Maybe it was sad, but it was also freedom. The strange freedom of getting to choose who you were instead of being told. That night after dinner, Kira pulled out the stone Brother Aldrich had given her, the green one for her collection of saved souls. I think I need to add one, she said. Who? You. Davin looked confused. I'm not dying. No, but I saved you anyway. You were dying in a different way. Dying from hate and grief in a war that was eating you alive. And we saved each other from that. She placed the stone on the windowsill next to a few others she'd been collecting. The young guard who'd let them go. Brother Aldrich himself. The innkeeper who'd given them a chance. Every person who'd chosen kindness when cruelty would have been easier. We're building something, Kira said. Not just a life, a collection of moments where people chose better. Davin came to stand beside her, looking at the small pile of stones. Brother Aldrich would approve. He'd probably say we're being sentimental. He'd be right. Kira turned to face Davin. There was something she'd been feeling for weeks, something too big and too terrifying to name, but they'd already done impossible things. What was one more? I love you, she said. Simple, direct, the way orcs said important things. Davin's eyes went wide, then soft, then full of that particular joy that hurt because it was so complete. I love you too, he said. Is that allowed? Can enemies fall in love? We're not enemies anymore. Then what are we? We're us, whatever that means. Whatever we make it mean. Davin kissed her. It was gentle and uncertain and perfect. It tasted like bread and hope, and the particular sweetness of choosing something instead of having it chosen for you. When they pulled apart, Kira rested her forehead against his again. That orc gesture that meant more than words. I want to build a life with you, Davin said. A real life, not just surviving, actually living. Then let's live, Kira said. And they did. 6 months after arriving in Crossroads, Kira and Davin opened a small shop. Half smithy, half general goods. Kira made tools and weapons. Mostly tools because Crossroads didn't need more weapons. Davin managed the business side, dealing with customers, keeping books, making sure they could pay rent. It shouldn't have worked. An orc and a human running a business together in a town of refugees. But Crossroads was built on things that shouldn't work. So maybe that's why it did. They got a bigger room, 2 windows instead of 1, a bed that didn't squeak, a small kitchen where Kira tried to cook orc recipes with human ingredients and usually created something edible, if not exactly traditional. Some nights, Kira still dreamed about her clan, about her father, about Marin with his carvings. She'd wake with tears on her face and Davin would hold her and remind her that choosing a new family didn't mean betraying the old one. Other nights, Davin dreamed about Tobias, about the brother he'd lost and the revenge that had nearly destroyed him. He'd wake gasping, and Kira would pull him close and remind him that living was the best revenge against a war that wanted them all dead. They healed each other, slowly, in small moments, in quiet ways. A year after they arrived, a new refugee came to Crossroads. An orc warrior, older. With clan markings Kira recognized immediately. Iron Peak clan, her clan. The warrior's name was Greth. She'd deserted 4 months ago after watching too many young orcs die for territory that meant nothing. She was looking for a new life, same as everyone else. Kira saw her in the market. They locked eyes. Recognition flashed. You're Kira, Greth said, chieftain's daughter. They think you died at Black Ridge. I did, Kira said. That person died. I'm someone else now. Greth looked at her, at Davin standing beside her, at the life Kira had built. Good, Greth said. She was dying anyway. That war kills everyone eventually. Better to become something new. They didn't become friends exactly, but Greth would stop by the shop sometimes, would share news about the clan. Her father was alive, still paralyzed, still proud. The war continued. People died. Nothing changed except the names of the dead. Do you ever regret it? Greth asked once. Leaving? Kira looked around the shop, at the tools she'd made, at Davin organizing inventory, at the life they'd built. Every day, Kira said honestly, and also never. Both things are true. That doesn't make sense. No, but it's honest. 2 years after arriving in Crossroads, Kira and Davin got married. Not a human wedding or an orc bonding. Something new. Something theirs. They stood in the town square with half the population watching. Humans and orcs and dwarves and elves and every combination that proved love didn't care about species. There was no priest, no formal ceremony, just Boss the innkeeper saying, "You two already chose each other. This is just making it official so we can have a party." Kira wore orc leathers with human embroidery. Davin wore human clothes with orc patterns stitched into the collar. Sarah stood as witness, little Fen on her hip, proud as if he'd arranged it himself. They exchanged vows they'd written. I promise to keep choosing you, Kira said, every day, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. I promise to keep seeing you, Davin said, not as an orc, not as my enemy, just as Kira, the person who taught me that love is braver than hate. They kissed, the crowd cheered. Human cheers mixed with orc war cries, mixed with dwarven applause, mixed with elven whistles. A symphony of cultures that had learned to make harmony. The party lasted until dawn. Someone brought instruments. Kira didn't have Marin's flute, she'd left that memory behind, but a human with a fiddle played. An orc drummer added rhythm. The music was messy and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Davin pulled Kira close as they danced, if you could call their swaying dancing. Neither human steps nor orc ceremonial movements fit, so they invented something new. Happy? Davin asked. Impossibly happy, Kira said, which is the only kind we know how to do. 3 years after arriving in Crossroads, Kira got pregnant. It shouldn't have been possible. Human and orc biology didn't work that way. Everyone said so, but apparently their bodies decided impossible was just a suggestion. The pregnancy was difficult. Brother Aldrich, who'd retired to Crossroads himself after one too many battles, provided care. He added a stone to his collection the day Kira went into labor. Another when the baby survived. They named her Marin, for Kira's brother, Lynn for Davin's mother, a name that belonged to both cultures and neither. A name that said, we're building something new. Marin had green-tinged skin and Davin's brown eyes, small tusks that would grow, dark hair with a slight curl. She was proof that impossible was just a word people used before they figured out how to make it work. Holding her daughter, Kira understood something she'd never expected. That love didn't divide. It multiplied. That choosing Davin didn't mean unchoosing her clan. That hearts were bigger than anyone gave them credit for. She's perfect, Davin said, looking at their daughter with awe. She's impossible, Kira corrected. But we're good at impossible. Marin grew up in a town where differences were normal, where having an orc mother and human father was just another variation of family. She learned Common and Orcish fluently, learned human songs and orc chants, learned that identity wasn't something you were given, but something you built. At 6 years old, Marin asked the question all children ask. Why don't we look the same? She pointed at her green-tinged skin, then at Davin's pale hand. Why am I different? Kira knelt to her daughter's level. Because different is what we are. Your papa is human, I'm orc. You're both. You're new. You're proof that different doesn't mean broken. But the other kids say humans and orcs are supposed to fight. They used to, Davin said, before we chose different. Can I choose different too? You already are, Kira said. Just by existing, you're choosing that love is stronger than hate. Marin thought about this with a child's seriousness. I like choosing different. Good, Kira said. Never stop. Part 3. The Proving. 5 years after arriving in Crossroads, the war ended. Not with a grand treaty, not with armies surrendering, just with exhaustion. Both sides ran out of soldiers willing to die for territory no one really wanted. Ran out of families willing to sacrifice children for grudges older than anyone could remember. Peace came quietly, awkwardly. Borders opened slowly. Trade routes resumed. People who'd been enemies started being neighbors again, uncertain how to act without weapons drawn. Crossroads became more than a refuge. It became a model, proof that humans and orcs could coexist, could build together, could create families and businesses and futures that included both. Diplomats came to study the town, to understand how it worked, to learn the rules that made peace possible. The rules were simple. No past, no fighting, no questions. Choose present over history. Choose people over propaganda. Choose love over hate. Simple rules, hard rules, but possible rules. Kira and Davin gave tours sometimes, showing visitors their shop, their family, their life that had started with one human choosing not to kill one orc on a battlefield. How did you make it work? Visitors always asked. We just kept choosing each other, Davin would say. We kept seeing each other as people first, Kira would add. Everything else came after. But the cultural differences are just details, Kira would finish. Love is bigger than details. 10 years after arriving in Crossroads, Kira's father died. Greth brought the news. The old warrior had lived longer than anyone expected for someone paralyzed. But time caught everyone. Kira took 3 days to process it. Cried in Davin's arms. Told Marin stories about the grandfather she'd never met. Then she did something she'd been too afraid to do before. She wrote a letter to her clan, told them she was alive, told them about Crossroads, About Davin, about Marin, about the life she'd built from choosing different. She didn't expect a response. The letter was more about saying things that needed to be said. 6 months later, a response came. From her uncle, now chieftain of Iron Peak clan. The letter was short, formal, but it said, "You were mourned, you are remembered. You are still clan even from afar. Live well." Kira cried reading those 4 sentences because they meant acceptance. Not agreement, not approval, but acceptance that she'd chosen her path and they respected her right to walk it. That night, she added a new stone to her collection. For her clan, for letting her go, for proving love could exist across distance and difference and time. 15 years after arriving in Crossroads, Marin brought home a boy. He was human, nervous, polite, trying very hard not to stare at the orc mother or the mixed species family. "This is Garrett," Marin said, and there was defiance in her voice, waiting for objection. Kira looked at Garrett, at her daughter, at the fear that came from thinking love might not be allowed. "Does he make you happy?" Kira asked. "Yes." "Then he's welcome." Just like that. No drama, no prohibition. Because Kira had learned something over 15 years. Love wasn't something you controlled. It was something you celebrated when you found it. Garrett stayed for dinner, was awkward, spilled his drink, apologized 17 times. But he looked at Marin like she was the sun and he was a plant dying in darkness. After he left, Marin hugged her parents tight. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" Davin asked. "For teaching me that love is brave, that choosing someone is the most important choice." Kira held her daughter close, thought about a battlefield 15 years ago, about a human who chose mercy, about impossible becoming possible. "You learned well," she said. 20 years after arriving in Crossroads, Kira and Davin stood on the ridge overlooking the town. The valley below had grown. More buildings, more people, more proof that different could work. Marin was married now. To Garrett. They lived in the next valley, building their own impossible life. They had a daughter, Kira's granddaughter. Even more impossible because she was proof that mixed could mix again. 20 years, Davin said, feels longer and shorter at the same time. Kira leaned against him. They were older now, gray in his hair, scars on her hands from years of forge work. But they were here, alive, together. "Do you regret it?" Davin asked. "Ever?" "Every day," Kira said. "And also never. Both things are still true." "That makes sense now." "Only took 20 years." They stood in comfortable silence. Not the heavy silence of enemies. Not the awkward silence of strangers. Just the easy silence of two people who'd spent 20 years learning how to be together. "Tell me again," Davin said, "about the first time we met." Kira smiled. They'd told this story 100 times to visitors, to friends, to their daughter. But it never got old, because it was the story of how impossible became possible. "I was dying," Kira began, "on a battlefield full of corpses, and I asked a human soldier to make it fast. But he froze," Davin continued, "because he saw a person, not a monster. And his actions impressed me," Kira said, "because he chose mercy when revenge would have been easier." "And we chose each other," Davin said, "every day for 20 years. And we'll keep choosing," Kira finished, "for as long as we can." They walked back down to Crossroads together, to the shop they'd built, to the life they'd created, to the community they'd helped shape. That night, Kira held Marin's carved stone one more time, the same lullaby of memory Keith had taught her 35 years ago, the one about being safe even when the world wasn't safe. Davin listened, eyes closed, peaceful. And Kira understood finally that this was what victory looked like. Not a battlefield with defeated enemies, but a small room with someone you loved, proving that choosing love wasn't naive or weak. It was the bravest thing anyone could do. The next morning they opened their shop like always, greeted customers, made tools, sold goods, lived an ordinary, extraordinary life. Because sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is choose happiness when the world expects you to choose hate. Sometimes the bravest warriors are the ones who lay down their weapons and pick up hope instead. Sometimes enemies become family by deciding that enemy was just a word. And words could be changed by people brave enough to write new stories. 20 years after a human soldier froze instead of killing, Kira and Davin had built proof that love was stronger than war. They'd built a family, a business, a community, a life. They'd built something worth dying for by choosing instead to live. And every morning when Kira woke beside Davin, she thought about that battlefield, about the words, "Please make it fast," about the choice that changed everything. And she smiled, because fast had been the wrong request. What she'd needed all along was slow, was patient, was someone willing to take the long, hard road that led to healing instead of the quick, easy path that led to death. She'd needed someone to see her, and Davin had, and she'd seen him back. And together they'd proven that seeing each other, really seeing, with eyes that looked past skin color and species and propaganda, was the first step toward peace. Blood makes you orc. Blood makes you human. But love makes you family. And family is the only army worth fighting for. 25 years after that battlefield, Kira sat in a chair outside their shop, watching the sun set over Crossroads. Davin was inside, closing up for the day. Their granddaughter was visiting, playing in the street with other children. Mixed heritage, pure human, pure orc. All just children. A young couple walked past. Human man, orc woman. Holding hands nervously like they were still figuring out if this was allowed. Kira caught the woman's eye, smiled, nodded. The woman smiled back, relaxed slightly, kept walking with her human lover. And Kira thought, this is how it spreads. One couple at a time, one choice at a time, one person deciding that love was bigger than fear. Davin came out, sat beside her, and took her hand without a word. Good day, he asked. Every day with you is a good day, Kira said. Even the hard ones? Especially the hard ones. Those are the ones where we prove we meant our vows. They sat together as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. The same colors as that sunset 25 years ago when Kira had been dying and Davin had chosen mercy. You know what I think? Davin said. What? I think we did it. I think we actually proved that impossible doesn't mean impossible. It just means no one's tried yet. Kira squeezed his hand. We didn't do it alone. No, but we started it. That counts for something. It counted for everything. Their granddaughter ran over, breathless from playing. Grandma, tell me the story again. Which story, little one? The one about how you and Grandpa met, about the battlefield. Kira looked at Davin. He smiled, nodded. All right, Kira said, pulling her granddaughter onto her lap. It begins on a battlefield that smelled like endings. And as she told the story, their story, the true story of how two enemies became family, Kira understood that this was the real victory. Not that they'd survived, not that they'd built a life, but that their story would be told, would be passed down, would inspire others to choose mercy when hate seemed easier, would prove again and again that the bravest thing a warrior can do is choose not to fight. The sun set completely. Stars began to appear. And in a small town in the borderlands, a family sat together. Different species, different backgrounds, different everything, but family nonetheless, because they'd chosen each other. And that choice had changed the world. One person at a time, one day at a time, one impossible love at a time.